OK, so our first story is a huge story, un grande surprise, you might say. Surprise surge for left pushes French far-right into third place. The left-wing New Popular Front won 182 seats, followed by President Emmanuel Macron's centrist Together alliance on 168. And the far-right National Rally, which was predicted to win the whole thing in a landslide, has only 143 seats. Christo, surprise, shock, or delight and relief, of course?
It is, I think, a relief, but I think, bearing in mind what we were talking about earlier about the direction of the Conservative Party, I think that there are lessons to be learned here, and if the people here in the UK, I'm not suggesting reform is far right, but certainly it is right of the Conservative Party. There are lessons to be learned here, I think, from the Labour government about how on earth they are going to try to suppress people going further right in this country, because obviously many of the challenges that make people want to go to the right, immigration, housing, all of these sorts of things are pressing issues today here in the UK.
I think it's absolutely fascinating. This is why I don't get people who aren't into politics or sport, because you just never know what's going to happen. This has been really interesting to watch. Macron, of course, took this big gamble.
Let me stop you there and ask you why. Has anybody worked out why? Just as in this country we were puzzling and confused, why did Rishi Sunak want to call the election when he did? There were all sorts of theories. Macron's shock, spontaneous, it seemed, decision suddenly to call an election at that point, nobody got why, and still don't really understand why.
I think it was kind of a certain kind of energy of like, I'm going to deal with this now. I'm just going to stamp it out. You know, the people will speak. And then it's gone the sort of in a different direction to the one that he wanted. And yet the scenes in Paris of jubilation, because of course, for a long time, Macron has been working and sort of pandering, if you like, or working more closely towards the right. And now he's going to have to go the other way. He's suddenly now got chaos because he's got to find a left-wing prime minister.
Let's just explain why there's chaos. We were predicted, or the polls predicted, a landslide right-wing victory for Marine Le Pen, the very far right.
Yes.
Obviously, the association over the past years with National Front, fascist, kind of overt racism, barely even suppressed, that kind of a thing. And it looked as if they were going to have a landslide victory. Yet again, I think, Christo, you're talking about the lessons. One of them is don't necessarily trust the polls, isn't it?
Well, also, I think that what's interesting is, yes, there's jubilation, but there are a lot of disaffected people in France who felt like that route of the far right, and it is right to call them the far right in this case, was their only route, was the only way that they were going to get their voice heard. Now, those people, as wrong as they might be to go down that route, are disaffected, are angry, and need to be in some way brought into the fold.
Let's talk about what happened to oust them and to ensure that they are not now in the position of unilateral power and total autonomy that some people delighted in the prospect of, and some people were absolutely terrified stroke horrified about. So what happened, Gemma, to stop this? Because this looked like a foregone conclusion. This is why we're all so surprised this morning. It's like, oh my God. I mean, zut alors and a bit of that, like, whoa.
Bonnet de douche.
Yeah, this is not what we expected and not what we were told was happening. So what happened to stop it?
Well, they have a different voting system in France. So it appears that in the first round, as you say, it looked absolutely nailed on for Le Pen to win. But it's almost like the French have then gone, oh, do I actually want that? And it's almost like the left united, so the Greens and the left, if you like, the equivalent of, came together to make sure that this didn't happen. And also perhaps a lot of people suddenly in the cold light of day, and with that looking like a reality, perhaps a protest vote turns into a different kind of vote second time around.
Which you might say, Chris, is what President Macron wanted in the first place, which is why he called this election now. He wanted a universal frisson, as we're so French, a kind of shudder of horror, like, oh my goodness, do we really want the right wing to stampede in? He hoped that he would get this result, but you know, be careful what you wish for, not in this way, because he's now in the most precarious position of all.
But if he now leans to the left and does sort out things like housing, like the irony is, because everything goes round in a circle, that the people who feel most disaffected and are lurching to the right may be placated and may actually sort out some grassroots problems that need sorting out.
If the alliance firstly sort of holds, because that's all a little bit sort of unstable, but secondly as well, I think that it was the element of surprise. I think that was what he was going for in answer to your question about why he went. I think that was exactly like Rishi Sunak. He'd hope that everyone else had their pants down and wasn't actually ready for it.
Yeah.
I just find as well, just separately to all of this, the French election, I mean, it goes on as long as the Euros, doesn't it? I mean, like, we have it all done and dusted in a night. It's going on and on and on.
I think you'd agree, there's lots of questions, and we touched on this earlier, but questions to be asked about our voting system
but let's not ask them when we're still pondering. Let's ask that on a different day when we're asking about that.
We haven't got
not
the
when we've
strength.
just finished our own election, which felt long enough, I must admit, even if it was short and sweet in some ways. But the fact that what's happened now in France, the result is that Le Pen is in third place, but we've got the leftist parties and centrists, but no majority, no kind of mandate to govern, no kind of guarantee. And I don't know whether we fling in the French temperament here and say, you know, there's a certain amount of, I don't know, tempestuous passion that might be going on that might make it actually technically impossible to form any sort of government at all because they're not good at coalitions over there.
Which also might then completely backfire and open the door in a few years' time for everyone to say, well, there you go, it all went wrong, and to give Le Pen an even bigger mandate to power.
For right now, though, it's a fantastic result as far as I'm concerned.
As far as you're concerned, the right-of
woman
pretty much vanquished.
Dangerous.
Although Marine Le Pen is saying just for the time being,
of course,
this is a minor setback.
The footage of the fascists round the telly, their faces, seeing that result was just unbelievable. They were like, oh, I mean, it was a huge shock.
All right, let's move on to our next.